petitioner has failed to adduce any credible evidence to establish his claim that none of the candidates obtained more than the 50% threshold. PW1, Mr. Isedun Ketia, testified under cross-examination that even though the petitioner had all the documents that the first responder used to collate the result from the polling stations to the regional collation center, the petitioner decided not to tender them in evidence to support the petition. Under cross-examination by counsel for second respondent on the 1st of February 2021, this is what PW1 said among others. Quote, question, as you know, all the documents that the EC was using to collect the results from the polling stations right up to the regional center, you had carbon copies of them, didn't you? Answer, yes, we do. Question, and I'm saying that you have not put together your carbon copies to show that indeed nobody won the elections. Answer, yes, my lords, because that is not the purpose of our petition. We did not come to court to take over the work of the Electoral Commission. But we are entitled, if we see the results are flawed, they are not born out of data, we are entitled to challenge and insist that we must have a credible results and a declaration that is on the votes that were cast at the polling stations. Question, I am saying that you have not provided any basis for your own, for your call for a runoff. Answer, no, my lords, we have not brought that data here. We did not consider it necessary to bring any such data here. End of quote. The evidence is thus clear that the petitioner failed to give credible evidence to prove his case that none of the parties who contested the presidential election with him made the more than 50% threshold as required by Clause 3 of Article 63 of 1992 Constitution. And so there should be a rerun. All the petitioner sought to do by way of evidence was to tender Exhibit A to demonstrate that the chairperson of first respondent committed errors in making the declaration. But as already stated, that error could not take away the valid votes of the people. Having held that the declaration by the chairperson of first respondent on 9th of December 2020 did not violate Article 63 Clause 3 of the 1992 Constitution, we will end the resolution of issue 4 with two admonitions. The first is that of our esteemed brother Babwani JSC in the case of Akufo-Addo Hernandez versus Mahama and another, Supra, at page 439. Quote, elections are complex systems designed and run by fallible human beings. Thus, it is not surprising that mistakes, errors, or some other imperfection occur during an election. Because absolute electoral imperfection is unlikely and because finality and stability are important values, not every error, imperfection, or combination of problems found in an election contest voice the election or changes its outcome. End of quote. The second is to express our disagreement with this issue, in these positions, that the petitioner literally hangs on how he's released on. The petitioner attacked the oral declaration made by the chairperson of the first respondent in relief A, B, and C, and consequently sought an annulment of CI 135 in relief D. He also invited the court to injunct the second respondent from holding himself out as the president-elect on the account of the errors described in the declaration in his relief E, for the court to order a rerun between the petitioner and second respondent on account of the alleged effect of these errors in relief F. But as shown from the evaluations and analysis above, it was part of the petitioner's case in paragraph 6 of the petition that the first alleged error arose because of a misdescription of the number of total votes cast as total valid votes cast. The petitioner also asserted his knowledge of the total valid votes cast in paragraph 12 of his petition, and yet the petitioner is inviting the court to ignore the substantive truth of the result of the election and give him relief on the basis of the errors pointed out in his own petition. He is also inviting the court to use the mistakes he has described to tamper with the true and known result of the presidential election and the will of the people. By his relief A, it is only when the court upholds the error in the description of total votes cast instead of total valid votes that the declaration will be in breach of Article 63(3). Again, by relief B, it is when the court ignores the substantive relief of the election, results of the election, that it declare that no candidate won more than 50% of the votes. The petitioner is making his claim knowing that if the court agrees, the court will essentially change the true outcome of the election. In the combined effects of relief C and F, the petitioner is asking this court to find the oral declaration made on 9 December 2020 to be unconstitutional, null and void, and yet for this court to use void declaration to change the result of the election by ordering a rerun between the two leading candidates. These are submissions that must not appeal to any court of justice, equity, and good conscience. Issue 5, the alleged vote padding. The last issue set down for this trial is whether or not the alleged vote padding and other errors complained of by the petitioner affected the outcome of the presidential election results of 2020. The petitioner has alleged in his petition that the first respondent favored the second respondent with padded votes totaling 5,662 in 32 constituencies. In proof of this allegation, the petitioner tendered through PW1, Mr. Segun Ketia Exhibit F, which is a spreadsheet covering sample details from 26 constituencies, showing the alleged vote padding by certain officials of the first respondent in favor of the second respondent. It is pertinent to note that even though the pleadings of the petitioner alleges that the vote padding took place in 32 constituencies, totaling 5,662 votes, PW1 in his witness statement testified that the vote padding rather took place in 26 constituencies and totaled 4,683 votes. We know that even though PW1 alleged in his witness statement that the vote padding was done by some officials of the first respondent, his evidence did not name any alleged official. That leg of the allegation was not proof either. The allegation of vote padding in favor of second respondent was denied by both respondents. Having been so denied, one expected the petitioner to adduce credible evidence to prove it. However, the only evidence adduced on this issue was the tendering of Exhibit F, the spreadsheet containing samples from 26 constituencies, showing the alleged vote padding. To be specific, the allegation, as stated at paragraph 36 of Mr. Segun Ketia's witness statement, was that when the votes of second respondent obtained in all polling stations as shown on their respective pink sheets in the 26 constituencies are aggregated, the resultant figure differs from the figure that was declared by first respondent for second respondent as captured on the summary sheets of the respective constituencies. Having alleged as above, one expected that the pink sheets of the 26 stations in the 20 pink sheets of the polling stations in the 26 constituencies would have been exhibited to prove the vote padding as alleged. This was not done, apart from the spreadsheet, which was self-serving document. PW1, Mr. Segun Ketia admitted that what he had tendered were only samples, but no effort was made to submit the rest, if indeed they existed. Besides the allegation of vote padding, the petitioner also alleged that there was wrong aggregation of votes totaling 960 votes in favor of second respondent. This was contained in Exhibit E, tendered by PW1, Mr. Segun Ketia. We found the allegation of vote padding very serious, since its occurrence undermines the integrity of an election. This impact being that votes are unlawfully added to the votes of a candidate to increase the total votes of that candidate. We have observed already that this allegation was not proof as expected of the petitioner. However, assuming the votes padding of assuming the votes padding of 4,693 took place at all in favor of second respondents as alleged by PW1 in Exhibit F. This court would then have to ascertain its impact on the final results declared by the first respondent. Indeed, evidence on record clearly showed that the impact of the alleged vote padding, even if proved, would have been very insignificant and would not have materially affected the outcome of the elections. It would therefore not have been a proper ground for the annulment of the 2020 presidential elections. This is so because if one deducts the alleged votes padded from the total valid votes obtained by the second respondent, he would still have crossed the more than 50% threshold required under Article 63(3) of the 1992 Constitution. This fact was established through the cross-examination of PW1, Mr. Esedun Ketia, on 1st February 2021 by counsel for the second respondent as follows. Question. The original figure is 6,730,143. Subtract from the 4,693. What do you get? Answer. You get 6,725,720. Question. What is that figure as a percentage of 13,121,111? Answer. 51.295%. So you see that even if you were to deduct your alleged padded votes from the votes of the second respondent, he still crosses the 50% plus threshold. Answer. I disagree because samples cannot be subtracted from another population figure. We observed that PW1 from the above extract was merely being evasive, since it is obvious that if we take away the alleged padded votes of 4,693 from the total valid votes of the second respondent as at 2nd December to 9 December 2020, as shown above, the second respondent will still have obtained more than 50% of the total valid votes cast, satisfying the threshold of Article 63(3) of the 1992 Constitution. On this issue, we are settled in our minds that the allegation of vote padding, though serious in an election such as the presidential election, was not proved by credible evidence. Furthermore, even if the vote padding took place, same was not material or substantial to change the final results, so declared by the chairperson of the first respondent. In holding that the impact of the vote padding, if even proved, could not have affected the declaration, we are emboldened by the decision of Lord Denny in the case of Morgan versus Simpson, 1975, 1 Queen Bench 151, which was cited by counsel for the petitioner in his closing address. We observe, however, that counsel for petitioner only referred us to only one of the 3 propositions articulated by Lord Denny. In that case, Lord Denny summarized the duty of courts in making declarations upon hearing election petitions. He stated 3 propositions as follows. 1. If the election was conducted so badly that it was not substantially in accordance with the law as to elections, the election is vitiated, irrespective of whether the result was affected or not. 2. If the election was so conducted that it was substantially in accordance with the law as to elections, it is not vitiated by a breach of the rules or a mistake at the polls, provided that it did not affect the result of the election. 3. But even though the election was conducted substantially in accordance with the law as to elections, nevertheless, if there was a breach of the rules or a mistake at the polls, and it did affect the results, then the election is vitiated. When Lord Denny's propositions are read as a whole, the combined effect of the propositions is that an election will be voided upon the occurrence of infractions that actually affect the votes of the citizens cast at the polling stations, and not the incidents of administrative errors and or mistakes committed by officers charged with the conduct of such elections. We find this same sentiment expressed by our own eminent jurist Adinya JSC in the first presidential election petition case, Ekufuado and Ades versus Mahama and Ades. Number 4, 2013 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Report, Special Edition, page page 73 at page 237 237 to 238 her ladyship had this to say. Quote, courts usually apply the election code to protect, not to defeat the right to vote. Public policy favors salvaging the election and giving effect to the voters' intent, if possible. The right to vote is at the core of our democratic dispensation, a principle I've affirmed in this opinion with reference to the Tenadi and Anna Okansi line of cases. End of quote. Conclusion. We conclude this judgment by emphasizing that the petitioner did not demonstrate in any way how the alleged errors and unilateral corrections made by the first respondent affected the validity of the declaration made by the chairperson of the first respondent on the 9th December 2020, as already stated in this judgment. The petitioner has not produced any evidence to rebut the presumption created by the publication of CI 135, for which his action must fail. We have therefore no reason to order a rerun as prayed by the petitioner as in relief F. We accordingly dismiss the petition as having no merit.
As the court pleases.